The first thing Olivia noticed wasn't the chandelier or the gold-lined ceiling or even the quiet hum of central air. It was the silence. That kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but waiting like something sacred or dangerous was about to happen. It pressed against her chest, tight and suffocating, as she stood just inside the doorway of her room, so clean, so polished, she was afraid her dust-covered shoes would stain the tiles. She clutched her worn handbag tighter. The strap had frayed from years of overuse, but it was the only bag she owned. It held her ID, a cracked bottle of perfume, and her late mother's rosary. And now, maybe her entire future. The guards had shown her in with little more than a nod, their eyes scanning her quickly, then skimming past her like she wasn't important. She felt like a smudge in a painting, accidental, tolerated, but very much out of place. Then the door opened again, and in walked a man who didn't look like any version of the Andrew she remembered. The man she had met at the construction site had looked like everyone else, maybe a little worse. His shirt had been 2 sizes too big, stained at the collar. His hands were blistered, his back bent under a cement bag he clearly didn't know how to carry. His eyes had been tired, almost scared. But this Andrew, this man, wore a sky-blue caftan that shimmered beneath the chandelier like liquid silk. His face was clean-shaven, his posture regal, his wristwatch catching the light like a small sun. Her heart stuttered. He saw her stop and smiled. Not the kind of smile that rich men wear when they see something they own. Not the confident smirk of someone expecting gratitude. It was small, unsteady, like it might fall apart if she looked too closely. And then he dropped to one knee. Everything stopped. Her breath, her thoughts. Even the guards shifted uncomfortably and turned away. He opened a tiny velvet box, and a diamond rose to meet her gaze. "Olivia," he said, his voice calm but shaky. "I don't want to waste another day pretending." She blinked. What? Her hands trembled around the strap of her bag. The light from the chandelier fractured across the diamond, throwing little stars onto the marble floor between them. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. 2 days. That's all it had been. Just 2 days since she had met him, since their hands had shared the weight of a cement bag under the burning Lego sun. And now he was kneeling before her in a mansion on Banana Island. The memory hit her like a flood. That morning at the site, the sun had been cruel, the air thick with cement dust. She had just finished her second trip carrying blocks when she saw him. New, awkward, clearly not made for this work. His arms wobbled under the weight, legs shaking, shoulders hunched. He looked like he was going to drop it. So she walked up to him. "Please," she said, "let me help you." He turned slowly, his face flushed and covered in dust. His shirt stuck to his back. He didn't even try to hide his exhaustion. "You don't look like you've done this before," she added, a small smile softening her voice. He stared at her, like he couldn't believe she was talking to him. "No," he admitted, "I haven't." "Then give it here. I've been doing this a month now." They carried the load together. 30 steps to the block pile. 30 steps that changed everything. Later, they sat under a half-built wall, sharing water from her cracked bottle. She told him about her parents, how they had died in a car crash the day she graduated, how she had gotten a first class in accounting, but no one would hire her without connections, how the only work she could find was hauling bricks and mixing cement for a daily wage barely enough to eat. "I just want to be useful," she had said. He had looked at her for a long time, like the world had stopped moving. That night, a message came to her phone. "Don't go to work tomorrow. Meet me at number 12 Banana Island. I told someone about you. Your story is about to change." She thought it was a scam, a joke, a mistake. But something inside her, a fragile, foolish piece of hope, said it was real. And now here she was, watching a billionaire kneel before her, holding a diamond ring. I don't understand," she whispered. "You're rich." He nodded slowly. "Andrew Benson, CEO of Benson Group." She backed up a step. "You were pretending?" "At the site." He didn't flinch. "I was searching." "For what?" "For one real person. One kind soul who would see me when I had nothing to offer." She stared at him. All her life, she had been ignored, passed over, overlooked because of her accent, her clothes, her skin. And now a man who could have anyone was kneeling in front of her, saying she was the one. "I'm just an orphan," she said. "I wear the same clothes every week. I don't even know how to live in a place like this." He stood, gently holding her hand. "You have something I've never had," he said. "A heart that gives without asking. That's all I want." And somehow, that broke her. Her legs wobbled. Her eyes filled. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger. The sparkle was too bright. Too much. But she didn't pull away. The guards applauded softly, unsure whether it was allowed. Andrew laughed, a sound that hadn't escaped his chest in years. "Come," he said, offering his hand. "You're never going back to that site." Later that night, Olivia found herself in the back seat of a black SUV, the kind with leather seats and cold air that whispered from hidden vents. The driver said nothing. Outside, Lagos buzzed like a restless dream, but she barely noticed. Andrew sat beside her, quietly watching her, as if afraid she might disappear. They pulled up to a boutique that looked more like a museum than a store. Glass doors opened automatically. Inside, soft lights glowed above silk dresses and golden shoes. The staff bowed when they saw him. "Good evening, Mr. Benson. Welcome back." "Back?" He smiled. "She can have anything she wants." For hours, she tried on dresses. Blue ones that made her feel brave. White ones that made her feel like a stranger. Gold ones that whispered of a life she couldn't yet believe belonged to her. And then came a cream gown. Simple. Elegant. No sparkle. Just soft fabric that fell like water and hugged her figure without trying too hard. When she stepped out, Andrew's breath caught. "That's it," he whispered. She looked in the mirror, and for the first time, she didn't see a girl trying to survive. She saw a woman who had been chosen. Every morning after that first night felt like a dream walking on eggshells. Olivia woke in a bed so large she lost her bearings each time she turned. Silk sheets whispered under her skin, and the scent of lavender clung to the pillows. But her heart never stopped watching for cracks. At the Benson estate, everything worked without effort. Faucets obeyed. Lights dimmed with a touch. Even the gate greeted her with a quiet, dignified hum. Andrew had made it clear she belonged here now. But the mirrors disagreed. She looked at her reflection and saw a guest. A visitor in borrowed luxury. Still, she smiled at the staff when they brought breakfast. She learned how to answer politely when strangers bowed and called her Ma. She tried not to flinch when her footsteps echoed alone in the hallways. And when Andrew entered the room, she made sure her smile was real. He had given her everything. But outside the mansion, the world was harder to convince. On her first day at Benson Group headquarters, Olivia wore a navy suit he had helped her choose. Her badge read, "Account Officer, Finance Department." The words felt too heavy on her chest. She held her laptop close like a shield as she walked through the glass doors. The building was pure steel and ambition. Everyone moved like they had somewhere more important to be. They smelled like designer perfume and carried phones with screens brighter than the future. And they stared. Some smiled. Others whispered. All noticed. By noon, Olivia had memorized the way people looked at her. Like a question mark. Like a mistake that someone powerful hadn't corrected yet. She kept her head down, her posture straight, and tried to focus on numbers. Andrew visited her office twice that first week. Both times he knocked softly and said the same thing. "Still settling in?" And she replied the same way. "I'm trying my best, sir." He always smiled. "Call me Andrew." But she couldn't. Not here. Not where everyone watched. He had given her a chance, a title, but came with shadows. And not everyone welcomed her. In the glass-walled office 3 doors down sat Clarissa. Tall, composed, eyes like steel wrapped in silk. She was Andrew's former assistant, but still held the air of someone who believed the job would come back to her if she waited long enough. Clarissa had been with Andrew for 3 years, through acquisitions, charity galas, press conferences. She had packed his files, remembered his schedule, fetched his coffee when he forgot to eat. She had stayed late, arrived early, and knew the name of his tailor. And now she watched Olivia from across the hallway, and hated every second of it. It was Clarissa who knocked on Andrew's office one golden afternoon and tilted her head just enough to look concerned without seeming obvious. "Sir," she said, voice like butter. "A small thing." About the new account officer. Andrew looked up. Yes. She's doing well, Clarissa smiled. But I thought you should know, there are whispers. Some senior staff feel the promotion was sudden. His brow furrowed. Sudden. She sighed, the kind of sigh that says I didn't want to bring this up. You know how people are, sir. Something she must be related to you. Or that she's close. Personally. The room went still. Andrew leaned back in his chair. Thank you, Clarissa. I'll handle it. She bowed her head. Of course, sir. But behind her eyes, something glinted. A tiny victory. By that weekend, whispers grew teeth. In the cafeteria, 2 interns traded comments over jollof rice. See the phone she carries now? One whispered. Brand new iPhone. You think it's from salary? Another snorted. Not kindness turn employment letter. Olivia heard it. Not the words, but the tone. She had grown up with that tone. The one people used to remind you where you came from. She left the cafeteria before her food turned cold. That evening, she sat alone in her office long after others left. The glow of her computer screen blurred as tears built. She hadn't done anything wrong. She came in early. She stayed late. She double-checked her spreadsheets. She answered emails with care. Still, she didn't fit. When Andrew found her, she was staring blankly at a report. You're still here? He asked gently. She wiped her eyes too late. Just wrapping up. He frowned. What's wrong? She hesitated, then whispered, They think I don't deserve this. Andrew sat on the edge of her desk, his expression unreadable. People talk when they don't know your story. Let them. But it hurts, she admitted. He nodded slowly. Then let's make them listen. The next day, he called a board meeting, announced a financial presentation the following week, and that Olivia would lead it. Her heart stopped. Me? She asked after the meeting. You, he said. You earned it. She swallowed hard. No one had ever said that to her before. But not everyone clapped. Clarissa stood near the back of the room, arms folded, eyes narrowed. That night, while Olivia slept, Clarissa stayed late. She slipped into Olivia's office using a copied access card, opened a financial folder, replaced a spreadsheet. Not enough to trigger alarms, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. Then she smiled. Let's see how far pity takes you, she whispered. 1 week later, Olivia stood in the boardroom, palms sweating, nerves rattling every bone in her body. She wore a clean gray suit. Her hair was tied back. Her slides were polished, precise. Andrew sat among the directors, nodding encouragement. She began. The presentation was crisp, detailed. At first, the room leaned forward. Heads nodded. Eyes followed her every chart, until one director raised his hand. Miss Ada Day, he said, pointing at the screen. These figures, they don't match the audit report. A beat of silence. What? Olivia asked, stunned. He turned his laptop. Here. This section. She stared. The numbers were wrong. Horribly wrong. I don't understand, she stammered. That's not. These weren't in my file. Andrew looked at her, his expression shifting. Did you double-check your data? I swear, she said, voice cracking. Something's not right. The room shifted. Eyes narrowed. Whispers rose. Andrew's voice cut through. We'll review the documents. For now, please step outside. Olivia froze. Andrew, please. Olivia, he said, more firmly this time. Outside. Her throat closed. She turned and walked out, barely seeing the hallway as tears clouded her vision. She reached the far wall and leaned against it, both hands covering her face. Inside the boardroom, Andrew said nothing for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Cross-check all records, he said. Start with the system backups. Clarissa raised a hand, serene as always. Sir, I can assist the audit team. I've worked with both departments. He hesitated, then nodded. Fine. Outside, Olivia sat alone. She didn't go home, just sat by the company's garden, staring at a small fountain, watching the water rise and fall like something was trying to breathe. She remembered her parents, the dreams they had for her, the sacrifices, and she wondered what they'd say now. Inside, Clarissa smiled. The trap had worked. The word suspended landed like a slap. Olivia had never been fired before, never even been warned. But as she sat across from Andrew in the soft silence of his mansion's living room, that was the word he used. I'm not saying you did anything, he said, but I have to suspend you, Olivia. Just until we sort this out. She stared at the polished table between them. Her hands trembled in her lap. The room smelled of wood polish and fresh orchids. It smelled too clean for this kind of conversation. Andrew, she whispered, you said you trusted me. I did, he said. I still do. But not enough, she finished. He looked at her, pained. But he didn't argue. I wasn't even in the building that night, she said, voice cracking. Why would I sabotage a presentation I was terrified to give? His eyes stayed on her, but she could see it, the flicker of doubt, the same kind that had followed her all her life. She'd seen it in professors who assumed she cheated, in employers who never called back, in the bank teller who double-checked her signature twice. He stood, slowly. I just need time. She stood too. Time or distance. He didn't answer. Her heart broke in the silence. She picked up her bag, the same one she brought from her old life, the same one that still held her mother's rosary. When you find out the truth, she said, voice steady now, I won't be here waiting. And she walked out, into the rain. The sky had opened while they argued, and now Lagos was soaked in shadows and thunder. Her clothes were drenched in minutes. Water ran into her shoes. Cars hissed past, their headlights cold and indifferent. She didn't stop walking, didn't know where she was going. She just needed to get far away from everything that smelled like betrayal and heartbreak. By the time she reached the tiny apartment she used to rent, she could barely stand. The landlord, shocked to see her again, didn't ask questions. He handed her the spare key with a grunt and went back to watching football. Inside, the room was exactly as she remembered. Small, dim, real. She dropped her bag, collapsed on the bed, still in her soaked clothes. The ring on her finger caught the flicker of a street lamp. She stared at it for a long time, then curled into herself and cried like a child. Not because she'd lost a job, but because she'd lost him, the one man who had looked at her and made her feel like she mattered. And now he didn't believe her. The next morning, the story had already exploded. Billionaire CEO suspends new accountant amid scandal. Insider sabotage? Questions around sudden rise and fall of Olivia a day. Blogs, office gossip, online threads. Everyone had an opinion. Some said she was just a gold digger who got too greedy. Others claimed she was framed. But most just laughed behind their coffee mugs. Meanwhile, Andrew tried to keep his company steady. He held meetings, reviewed files, stared at spreadsheets without seeing numbers, and kept checking his phone, hoping to see a message from her. But she stayed silent. Clarissa didn't. She moved through the office like a queen in mourning, offering quiet support to Andrew, coordinating damage control with PR, delivering folders, smiling when needed, and planting rumors like weeds. Such a shame, she told a senior analyst. I really liked her, but sometimes the quiet ones surprise you. Andrew didn't hear her, but he felt the doubt. It had made a home inside him. 3 days passed. Then something happened. It began with a knock on Clarissa's office door. A quiet one. Ma, said a nervous voice. You asked me to update the firewall logs? She looked up. It was Kunle, a junior IT intern, barely 21, always flinching like the world might bite him. Yes, Kunle, she said. Delete all unnecessary backups. We only need this quarter's records. He nodded. Yes, Ma. She waved him off and returned to her screen. But Kunle didn't go home right away. That night, as he sorted through drives on his personal laptop, a folder copied automatically. A backup of the company's old internal surveillance system. Most of it was boring, empty hallways, janitors cleaning. But curiosity made him click. And there it was. A silent video. Time-stamped. Office 14B. Olivia's office. He watched. The hallway was dark. A woman stepped in. Not Olivia. Clarissa. She looked over her shoulder before unlocking the door. Walked in. Sat at Olivia's desk. Plugged in a USB drive. Typed quickly. Left. Kunle paused the footage. His heart pounded. He watched it again. Then again. His hand shook. The next morning, he didn't go to Clarissa. He went straight to Andrew. Sir, he said, voice trembling. I think you need to see this. Andrew barely looked up from his desk until the video played. He sat forward. Slowly. His jaw clenched. He watched the footage again, then stood silent. Send me this file, he said, and don't tell anyone you came to me. Yes, sir. Conley left, still shaking. Andrew stood for a long time, watching the screen go dark. Then he whispered, "Olivia." He called her 3 times. She didn't pick up. On the 4th, her tired voice answered. "What do you want?" "Olivia," he said. "I know what happened." She said nothing. "I found a footage. Clarissa framed you." Silence. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was wrong." "You think sorry fixes it?" "No," he said softly. "But I want to make it right. Please, meet me." "Where?" He didn't hesitate. "The construction site. Where we first met. Tomorrow. Noon." The line went dead. But she would come. He felt it. The next day, under a hot noon sun, he stood where it all began. By the blocks. By the dust. No caftan. No watch. Just a simple shirt and jeans. And there she was. Hair pulled back. Cream blouse. Navy skirt. The same quiet fire in her eyes. They stood in silence. Then she spoke. "Why didn't you believe me?" His throat tightened. "Because I've been betrayed so many times, I started expecting it." "That's not an excuse." "No," he said. "It's just the truth." She stared at him, waiting. He dropped to one knee. Again. But this time there was no box. No diamond. Just his voice. "If you can't forgive me," he said, "I want to start over. As 2 people who chose kindness even when life was cruel." Tears filled her eyes. She didn't move for a long time. Then she whispered, "I forgive you." He stood, pulled her into his arms, and the workers around them cheered without knowing why. Above them, the sun broke through the clouds. And for the first time in weeks, Olivia let herself believe. Maybe truth could survive betrayal. Maybe love could survive doubt. Maybe this was still the beginning. The morning Olivia returned to Benson Group, Lagos was still yawning awake. Rain clung to the windows of her taxi as it curved through the city's wealthiest district. Banana Island had never looked more unreal. Polished gates, sculpted gardens, a place so distant from the concrete dust she once breathed, it may as well have been fiction. But Olivia didn't feel like fiction. She felt like smoke returning to a fire. She stepped out, ignored the curious glances from the guards, and walked through the building's side entrance. No fanfare, no elevator music, just the muted thump of her flats against marble and the hum of a building pretending it hadn't tried to forget her. They noticed. From interns to board members, eyes followed her down the hall. Not openly. No one dared, but carefully, like they were trying to solve a riddle that had grown legs, and walk back into the room. "I thought she was gone," one whispered near the finance wing. "She is," someone else muttered. "She just doesn't know it yet." Olivia heard none of it. She moved like a woman made of stone. Quiet, unapologetic, drenched in dignity, not pride. Her hair was tied into a simple knot, her suit pressed, her steps steady. Andrew met her by the elevator, just like the first time, except now his face carried a shadow that hadn't been there before. "You came," he said. "I said I would," she replied. He offered her coffee. She took it without a word. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was healing, like 2 people learning to breathe around each other again. As they entered the executive floor, he nodded toward a new door. Her name was on the glass in clean, gold lettering. Olivia Adide, finance lead. "You moved me," she said. He looked at her. "I never should have let you leave." She walked past him into the office, placed her bag down gently, and took in the view. Lagos stretched wide and raw beyond the windows. Her old neighborhood was just a smudge in the distance. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not pretending this never happened." He hesitated. "I want to fix it." She met his eyes. "Then don't rush it." He nodded. Forgiveness had been offered. But trust was a tree that grew in seasons. That afternoon, Andrew stood before the entire Benson Group staff and made a statement no CEO in Lagos had ever dared. "I failed someone," he said, voice firm. "Publicly. Unjustly. I let suspicion lead instead of truth. That will not happen again." Olivia sat in the front row, her face unreadable, her posture unshaken. Andrew continued. "Clarissa Mwangi has been terminated. A full legal investigation is underway. But more than policy was broken, trust was. And for that, I owe this company and Olivia Adide an apology." The applause was hesitant at first. Then it grew. Not wild, but solid. A kind of clapping that said, "We see what you're doing. We're watching now." But power never surrenders quietly. Clarissa wasn't in prison. She wasn't even out of Lagos. She was waiting. In a quiet apartment on the island's edge, she sat with a new phone and an old grudge. Her nails clicked against the glass table as she flipped through images on the screen. Pictures. Time-stamped. Intimate. Olivia and Andrew. Together. Holding hands. Walking out of the boutique. Smiling by the fountain. All taken weeks before her official hire. All enough to spark the kind of questions no press statement could silence. She smiled. "All I need is one moment," she whispered. "One crack in their glass palace." Meanwhile, Olivia worked. She buried herself in audits, led budget reviews, corrected old miscalculations. She didn't try to impress. She didn't try to be perfect. She was just exact. Her team, at first unsure, slowly began to lean in. They saw the way she noticed small errors others missed. The way she listened during presentations, not just nodded. The way she didn't flinch when pressure built. Respect grew where suspicion had lived. But outside those walls, the world wasn't done spinning its stories. Blogs ran headlines with teeth. Too fast, too favored. Sleeping her way to the top. Benson's beautiful gamble. Andrew's PR team tried to smother the flames, but Olivia refused to hide. "They want you to stay quiet," he said one night. "Then I'll speak louder," she replied. So she did. She agreed to an exclusive interview. No makeup artist. No stylist. Just a microphone, a glass of water, and her truth. "I didn't ask for a handout," she told the journalist. "I was given a chance. Then I earned the rest. I'll keep doing that, whether anyone approves or not." When the interview aired, something strange happened. Silence. Not praise. Not backlash. Just space. As if the city, for one moment, had nothing left to say. That weekend, Andrew invited her to dinner on the rooftop of his building. Not to talk business. Just to be. They ate slowly, watched the sun bleed into the lagoon. "I keep thinking I'll wake up," he said. She smiled faintly. "You did. That's why I'm still here." He pulled something from his pocket. A small box. "Again?" she asked, raising a brow. He opened it. Not a ring. A key. To what? To a house I bought. For us. She looked at him. Her heart flickered. Her fingers curled. Then she closed the box. "Not yet." He nodded. She stood and walked to the edge of the rooftop, the wind pulling gently at her sleeves. He followed. "You still love me?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, "Yes. But I'm loving myself now, too. And I don't want to lose that again." His voice was a whisper. "I'll wait." She looked out at the city, eyes steady. "Then stand beside me. Not in front. Not behind. Just beside." He stepped up, shoulder to shoulder. They didn't hold hands. They didn't need to. Not tonight. Elsewhere, Clarissa hit send. A simple email. No caption. Just attachments. Photos. Receipts. A list of time-stamped images and internal memos. The email reached a journalist hungry for a comeback story. The kind of journalist who knew exactly how to destroy with truth, especially when dressed in the right timing. And so, once more, the storm began. Not with thunder, but with a ping. It began quietly, not with fireworks or a grand return. No cameras, no apology tours. Just a girl with sore feet and a backbone of steel standing at the edge of everything she'd once built. Olivia returned to the world, not because it was ready, but because she was. She walked back into Benson Group like she owned nothing, like she expected nothing. But in her silence, in her grace, people looked up and looked again. She was no longer the orphan who lucked into a billionaire's world. She was the woman who survived it and returned on her own terms. Andrew had cleared her name publicly. Press releases, board apologies, a full internal audit that exposed Clarissa, who now sat behind bars, stripped of power and privilege. But Olivia knew the truth. You can't erase a stain just by scrubbing headlines. People still talked. Not out loud, not to her face, but in the way they hesitated, in the way their eyes lingered too long. Some said she forgave too quickly. Others claimed it was all part of the plan. But Olivia didn't waste time on them. She had a company to build. Second Shift grew like wildfire. In 6 months, it became a name whispered in places that mattered. HR offices, boardrooms, startup incubators. Olivia wasn't just helping women get jobs. She was rewriting how the system saw them. Single mothers, dropouts, girls from slums with perfect GPAs but no network. Olivia gave them armor. And a way in. Andrew watched from the sidelines, offering help quietly. No headlines, no photo ops. He showed up when she needed resources, lawyers, strategy, but never love. Not again. Not until she said the word. And she didn't. Not for a long time. One evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking Lagos, the city breathing in lights below them. Olivia wore a black suit, her hair tied up, her hands loose at her sides. You ever think about what could have been if Clarissa hadn't interfered? Andrew asked softly. She didn't answer right away. Then, no. He turned, surprised. I think about what is, she said. What we are now. Andrew nodded slowly. And what are we? She met his eyes. People still healing, still learning, still trying. That night, she left without kissing him. But she didn't walk away angry, just aware. The next day, she received an anonymous delivery. A journal, leather-bound, no note. Inside, the first page was blank. The second held one sentence in Andrew's handwriting. Write the life we never dare to dream. She closed it gently and cried for the first time in months. In the year that followed, Olivia became a symbol. Not the polished kind that gets molded into statues, but the dangerous kind. The kind that reminds people their excuses are just comfort wrapped in fear. She spoke at universities, started a podcast, mentored women who reminded her of the girl who once carried cement on a construction site to feed herself. And yet, despite the success, something remained unfinished. Andrew still lingered in her periphery. A voice on a phone late at night. A quiet presence at her events. Never demanding. Always watching. Until one evening, he didn't come. No message. No call. Just silence. And it startled her how much that silence echoed. She went to his home unannounced for the first time in a year. The guards recognized her and didn't ask questions. Inside, the house was dimly lit. She found him in the study, sitting in the dark, his head in his hands. What happened? She asked, stepping forward. He didn't look up. My mother, he said, voice hoarse. Stroke. She froze. Oh, God. She's stable now, he added. But something broke. Not in her. In me. I realized I've built a life where I'm surrounded by people, but no one to call at 2 a.m. except you. And I didn't even deserve that. She walked to him slowly, sat beside him, said nothing. He turned to her, eyes tired. I know I've lost the right to ask, but will you stay? Just tonight. Not as the woman I failed. Just as Olivia. She nodded once, and stayed. That night, they didn't touch, didn't kiss. They just breathed. Together. Months passed. Seasons changed. And so did they. Andrew began therapy. Publicly. He started talking about vulnerability, failure, trauma. Not as a PR move, but as a man finally tired of hiding behind marble walls and Bluke fans. Olivia expanded Second Shift into 4 countries. She turned down 3 awards, accepted one, gave the trophy to her mother's grave. And on one quiet afternoon, she returned to the construction site one last time. It had been completed. A corporate tower now stood where their story began. She walked through it, unnoticed. In the center of the lobby stood a sculpture. Small, subtle. It showed 2 hands, one offering, one receiving. Cast in bronze. A plaque beneath read, kindness is not for when life is easy. It is for when life is hard. Olivia ate a day. She touched it, exhaled, and smiled. The proposal came again. Not with flowers. Not on one knee. Just a simple question over tea. Is it time? Andrew asked. She looked at him. The man who once hid behind fake beards. Now honest. Grounded. Still a little broken. But real. She nodded. Yes. The wedding was quiet. 30 guests. No press. A garden behind her old university. She wore a cream dress. He wore a white shirt and no tie. And when he read his vows, they weren't promises. They were confessions. I thought I needed someone to prove they'd love me without knowing who I was, he said. But what I needed was to become someone worthy of that love. She didn't cry, not until later, when they danced barefoot on the grass. And she whispered, "We made it." And he replied, "No, you let me here." Years later, people still told the story of the billionaire who disguised himself, of the orphan girl with dusty shoes. But Olivia never liked that version because it made it sound like a fairy tale, when in truth, it was war. A war fought with trust, with fire, with pain. And they didn't win because they loved each other. They won because they grew and stayed. And every time someone asked her, "How did you know it was real?" she smiled and said, "Because I walked away, and he still waited."